does it really have an impact, or is there an example of how it has affected your work or policy making?
Yeah, actually, the Social Dialogue Council is an instrument, institutionalized instrument of social dialogue, and it is one of the example how the state can interfere or motivate actors, workers and entrepreneurs to sit and have a discussion, because you mentioned the partnership is a way to go, and that's definitely true. But at the same time, it needs to be from economic perspective, from employees' perspective. It needs to go along with competitiveness. It needs to be good for their business to have this social dialogue and to go this path of partnership. And this is where the state or the legislation or the regulation can be very helpful if we create, or like we have in Poland, if we have this institutionalized forms of that are enhancing the social dialogue.
But if I may ask, has there been controversy in this kind of institution, or is it more
of
like
course,
they always agree? Or
no, definitely not. It's the platform. They're very rarely find a real consensus, but at least we have the platform, transparent platform, to discuss different positions. We, as a government, are obliged to take into account the position of employees, employers, and we have this opportunity to discuss the most crucial parts of our legislative. But at the same time, of course, this form of institutionalized social dialogue have some disadvantages. For example, it can lead to have this social dialogue more artificial or just pro forma, and we at the same time, having this council, have one of the lowest level of collective bargaining in Europe. We are working on it. We try to motivate both employees and workers and unions to be actively engaged in it, but it is a challenge to balance it, and once again, I would like to go back to the challenge of internationalizing the discussion, because in times that we are living and with the challenges we are facing, we no longer have this opportunity to act only on national levels. A lot of industries and a lot of companies act beyond borders on European or global level, and the standards, workers' rights standards, need to be negotiated across the borders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Liz, were you aware of this institution, and do you think it's a model that might work on a US level? Or
we would love to see a model of social dialogue in the United States, which we do not have. You think about the big challenges that we all face, and within our countries or globally, to not be able to have a system where you're bringing government and workers and unions and businesses together to really chart a course forward for your country is a huge void that we see in the United States, because we just don't have a system of being able to, problem solve together and actually be proactive. We often find ourselves in conflict because we don't often understand each other in the way that we need to, because discussions like that become very charged or very adversarial, because we end up at a breaking point before we're starting to talk. But I think this notion of social dialogue is very prominent across Europe and other places, and we've seen trade unions and workers' ability to influence policies in an effective way beyond just the footprint of collective bargaining, because there's a commitment to it, and especially when you talk about these technological shifts.
Do you think that there's a threshold when institutions like yours maybe get so big and are so diverse, like when it comes to the interests of the workers and the branches the fields that they work in, that it might be difficult to have a collective bargaining or a social partnership like for everybody, because interest might be in conflict, and it might be an easy way to start infighting and not achieve a common ground? I mean, having bathroom breaks and not being monitored by cameras is one thing, but besides the fundamental rights, there are quite different economic interests.
Absolutely. There's a lot of very unique to that industry, in terms of the interests of workers, and we do at an enterprise level mainly do the bargaining, between a particular business and its union. But there's a move in the U.S. to really scale that to a sectoral or industry-wide kind of approach, because we just don't have the scale that we need, right? And so if you look at, I know there's been some experiments, we've got collective bargaining in a lot of traditional industries, but in new industries where you have a gig approach, for example, we believe that no matter what kind of work you do, you should have the ability to form a union and have rights to collective action. And so if you drive for DoorDash or Uber, you should be able to have the ability to come together with your coworkers and influence your wages, your working conditions, how you're treated on the job, your safety and health. But we don't have a model for it in the U.S. And so there's some experimentation going on where we could approach a sector like, the platform economy, and find ways to, create benefits and standards and rights. Now, it's controversial, I'll admit, because we also feel that it's an erosion of workers' rights and power if we start to deviate from the system that we have in place for other workers. And we're creating something separate and new for, an emerging area of the economy that we're not really sure is the right is going to continue in a path that's sustainable. So I think, though, as a union movement, we should be the ones grappling with how do we give workers a voice and agency in their workplaces, knowing that work is changing and it's looking different.
And Blake, if I understood it correctly, then Rockwell has chosen a path to focus especially on having a good relationship with their own workers, but focusing on the company, but less on on collective bargaining or engaging in associations. And do you think why do you think that's the path to success?
Well, in the U.S., that's the case. I think the main event is to be able to have the relationship with workers that they not only feel like they're supported, that they can do their best work, but they're in an environment where they want to do their best work as well. Otherwise, they're going to leave, or they're not going to want to give their best, and ultimately that's going to create a less successful company. So it's the combination of their interest and the corporate interest to be able to create an environment where people say, this is a great place to work, and that involves a lot of different things. It certainly involves a competitive wage. It involves opportunities for advancement. It involves the confirmation that what they do is important, and it involves the need to feel like if they do a good job, they can get ahead. And I think regardless of whether they're working on the manufacturing line or they're working in the office space, those are fundamental truths, and we are absolutely committed to providing that, and it's a part of the cultural tenets that I brought into the organization and that are still as vibrant today as the first day in office, and it's an important part of the Rockwell culture, quite frankly.
Many US companies or international corporations are abolishing their DEI programs these days. And how does Rockwell do it? Or do you think there's maybe a chance to redefine diversity in the company workforce?
Take the case for embracing diversity, regardless of the way the winds blow. Being able to take advantage of the largest possible pool of talent to bring people in who feel welcome, regardless of what form of diversity they may represent, and to be able to keep those people because they feel like they can be themselves. I mean, that's at the heart of what is, the ethical reason for it, as well as the business reason, because you're bringing people in who certainly are qualified for their roles, and then to be able to give them, again, an environment where they can do their best work, and they want to do their, call it what you want, watch it through its evolutions, but that's at the vital core of it, and we remain as committed to that as ever.
Mm-hmm. Liz, for you, is it a worrisome development that's going on, or do you think
it is. Also knowing that companies are feeling the pressure to abandon those programs says a lot about the fragility of what we're facing in the U.S. And my hope is that companies who have invested see the value, because that's what this is about. As you said, people being able to come to work and be themselves, their true selves, and not being worried about bathrooms and the debates that are trying to divide us. And I think this notion of inclusion is about productivity as well. This is something that I think businesses have seen success, right? That if everybody feels like they can come to work, be treated with respect and dignity, and not feel unsafe at work, then they're going to be more able to contribute in the workplace. And that actually, to me, is a recipe for success for workers and employers.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd like to take a quick break to encourage anyone in the audience, maybe having a question, to use the opportunity to ask our panelists if there's anything you would like them to reflect on.
I have a question to Mr. Moret.
Please wait for the microphone.
Okay, I have a question to Mr. Moret. If the changes in the USA now have influenced to your practice, to your company in other countries, that, for example, in Poland, that what it could change for the Polish workers, for the Polish trade unions, if you think it is possible?
So I don't anticipate big changes for our footprint in Poland or for the nature of the work. We are a global manufacturer as well as a company serving global customers, and while the majority of our business is in North America, and we have lots of manufacturing in the United States, we do manufacture around the world. And in some cases, it's to be close to the customer when there's the combination of products and engineering that needs to be close to the application. But I see that continuing on. The decisions that we make for where we manufacture, what we manufacture, should be long-term decisions. And certainly we want to make sure that our customer base in the U.S. feels very well supported with local products and so on, but we're also serving customers around the world. I'm proud of our operations in Poland. I think it's a well-run, highly efficient plant, and the European market is important to us as well.
I have a question, actually. And this goes back to the policy levers. In manufacturing, we've not seen a robust investment in the U.S. for quite some time until recently, especially with chips and science and the IIJA, even though I know it's controversial, the IRA. Getting more women in manufacturing, and that's something that we in the U.S. really were trying to use the policy levers to say, to provide incentives for companies to take advantage of, some of these investments to diversify the workforce, including women in manufacturing, which has been stalled for years. And so I wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, I think as a company that is full of engineers, that was an important challenge for us. As more women are choosing engineering as a field, how can we be a landing spot, a destination for that talent? And so throughout the organization, I am happy to see that the percentage of women in our organization has increased fairly dramatically. I think it's also important because as the leader, in some of our markets, especially in North America, we cast a long shadow. And so the things that we do and the things that we say are important, not only in our own company, but also in our partner ecosystem, is important to certainly to continue to be successful as a company and as an enterprise, but also to be able to strengthen a culture that is the flywheel that survives individuals and good times and bad. So that's an area that, again, I think you have to really believe the why of this. You have to be committed to why this makes good sense for the long term.
I think it's a great example of ways to partner together, right? That we can be a pipeline to, more women attaining those jobs and know where to go to find the skills that they need to be competitive.
And as we have found, it's not just enough to have the partnerships with the universities, with, SWE and with the organizations that represent this talent, but to make sure that once in, feel the opportunity, resource groups, and to make sure that you're demonstrating that you're doing everything you can to create an environment, again, where everybody can do their best work. So.
Minister, would you like to weigh in on that question too? I would be particularly interested in the question of the competition between Europe and the US that you hinted at, Liz, earlier, like how it impacts the labor relations. Like we have seen the fear of European leaders that the United States will suck up investments with the IRA, and do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that we are observing in some way two different models of dealing with, for example, what you mentioned, this new jobs, new working model. Caused also by the development of new technologies. And I think that this European approach is interesting in context of the partnership, of the creating the safe environment and safe guarantees for the workers' right. I have in mind, particularly, for example, the Platform Workers Directive that European Union implemented. And right now, many countries are in this process of implementing it. And our goal is to create the same or the similar level of workers' guarantees for people like Uber drivers or couriers or interpreters that are traditionally they were being perceived as just small businesses that are like B2B model, but in reality, they are new model of workers and deserve the same working rights and working conditions. And in my opinion, this is the way to invest in the future that is at the same time using and gaining from the modern technologies and developments, and at the same time securing the future of this partnership, and we will see how it goes, comparing to the slightly different approach that we can observe on at least I think we're going to observe in US. And of course, there are a lot of risks and a lot of anticipated disadvantages. But I think that the response to that is just strengthening the integration of economy, of the policy world within EU, and it could work for the both workers and entrepreneurs in way to via the competitiveness of these two models.
Blake, is there maybe a wish you have? I mean, you have the Secretary of Social Issues sitting next to you in a country from a country where you have a big investment in. So, do you have like something about the Polish model that appeals to you, or that maybe you wish to change, or?
Well, I think you talked a couple of times, you mentioned the importance of a successful model, and I think finding that model and working together to find where the convergence is between a model that's successful for the employees as well as successful from an enterprise standpoint for our business, that's what we're trying to get to. If we do that through, again, the thoughtful implementation of technology along with a human-centric view towards this, you become more successful, so you can do more of whatever it is that you're doing, and that means you can hire more people. And if you have a certain level as a public company of profitability, you can enter into new lines of business, which also fosters the hiring of more people. And so that's kind of the connection point that I make between the two areas.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to start off. Oh, we have a question, please.
Hi, thank you so much for this panel. I was at another talk earlier today about the WEF's 2025 job report, and the ADP economist who was presenting said the number one thing that workers wanted was flexibility from their scheduling. And it seems like that's what workers are getting from the gig economy and why so many people have joined the gig economy. I just wonder from, the union's perspective, what has been the resistance to coming up with some alternative to help those workers join together? I mean, you talked about how, maybe you don't want to acknowledge this system, right? So there's some conflict there. I'd love to hear your perspective of where do you go from here when there's so many workers saying this is what they want?
Yeah, just that flexibility not be mistaken for exploitation, that now we're seeing people piecing together gig work to make full-time employment. That's where the rub is, that we want high road, high wage future for working people. And if you're working, just barely enough hours at each, like say 3 different gig companies, you're not getting healthcare benefits. You're not able to sustain your family, right? For the most part, I'm speaking of more of this rideshare kind of model. So I think that we need to examine in terms of rights and how we enforce high standards, how we have tied in the past in the U.S. things like workers' compensation and protection from discrimination, and your healthcare benefits are all tied to that model of full-time employment, working for a company usually. This gig economy has been growing, but not enough of a footprint to really shift the entirety of the labor employment model of the U.S., right? So it's still out there. It's a question. We as the trade union movement really do believe that no matter what kind of work you do, that you're entitled to rights and the ability to have dignity and a good wage. So it's on us to start really experimenting. And you'll see in a place like Massachusetts where rideshare drivers and one of our affiliated unions put a ballot initiative that passed to give rideshare drivers the ability to unionize. because as you know, independent contractors in the US fall through the cracks of labor law. So it's at a state level, a laboratory, and but I think flexibility, to your point earlier, is the ability to plan your life, the ability to have a schedule that's predictable is a baseline human need for most people. And that's what we hear most from a lot of young people in particular, of why they're unionizing. You see Starbucks. That was a huge campaign going on throughout the United States, that people really wanted to have a say in not having to, what they call clopen, right? Where you're working late till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, closing, and then they schedule you at 5 a.m. the next morning. That's insane.
So it hinges on the definition of flexibility, actually. And
Yeah,
how honest,
absolutely.
How to have an honest debate about it. I'm afraid we're running out of time. I would like to wrap it up by just maybe each of you can give me a very brief assessment. Do you have an optimistic or pessimistic view of how labor relations can develop in the very near future, under maybe with a glimpse of the new US administration?
You're looking at me? I always remain optimistic. I come from a tradition of labor management collaboration in my union, the electrical workers. So I always hold out hope that companies will see that it's in their best interest to work collaboratively with their workers and their unions.
I'm optimistic. I think the last few years have given us new perspectives on things that we took for granted previously. The paradigm that you had to be, in the office with no flexibility, I think has moved, as well as, the technology that can assist with, quite frankly, a higher standard of living. And I think I've seen in this role, things that work and things that don't work, mistakes made, things that were risky but turned out, and doing more of that for the next few years, and helping others to see that, I think is something that gives me optimism.
Thank you. Minister?
I'm as well very optimistic, and I think that in order to, that I hope and I think that labor relations will develop very well on few conditions. For example, that the flexibility will not mean lack of safety, lack of guarantees, lack of regulation. We can and we should seek for the rules and new regulations that can be adequate to this need of being flexible, but not unsafe, not uncertain about what will come next. How can I be, as a worker, how can I be treated? And similar to that, the second condition is that we need to look for tailor-made solutions, like for different groups. We can, and I believe that we can find, without losing these traditional ways of dealing with some tensions and issues, we need to be open-minded for these new solutions that will be adequate to new challenges and new realities that are already here.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I think today's panel is was an example for the unique blend of perspectives and ideas that you find here in Davos. It's I'm happy that you shared your thoughts and you were open and candid in this debate. And I actually wish we could continue for another 45 minutes. So thank you all very much, and I wish you all a good WEF for the next days.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.